One of the guys I'm interviewing today just did a. I'll stop.
We can't hear you.
Megadon, good morning, City of Lakes. Good to see you all this morning. We're kind of getting our breakfast still. We're a little slow here in person, folks online. So sorry about that. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test and the things we think, say, and do. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, our reflection today, Gail Noakes has it. Gail.
Thank you, Scott. Well, in honor of our speaker this morning, I wanted to share some quotes about justice. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Martin Luther King, Jr. Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. Benjamin Franklin. Honest people mistakenly believing in the justice of their cause are led to support injustice. And this is by Lillehaug, who I didn't know, so I looked him up. He served as Secretary of State under President Theodore Roosevelt. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for bringing about better understanding between the countries of North and South America and initiating important arbitration agreements between the United States and other countries. I've always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. Abraham Lincoln. And finally, truth never damages a cause that is just. Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you.
All right, so the song, the Rooters always have kind of a long discussion about what song we're going to do. We put a lot of thought into this. And today is National Pie Day. And so if those of you who know this song could sing along, that would be great. We're going to sing, Let's Have Another Cup of Coffee. Let's Have Another Piece of Pie, that old Depression favorite. All right. Just around the corner, there's a rainbow in the sky. So let's have another cup of coffee and let's have another piece of pie. Trouble's just a bubble and the clouds will soon roll by. So let's have another cup of coffee and let's have another piece of pie. So let's have another cup of coffee and let's have another piece of pie. All right, you can be seated. Thank you. Time to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians. And here comes Dick.
Well, in our competition, does this work? For bringing guests, Scott has made a fast track. Just direction. Okay. So Scott has brought 2 guests this morning. Bill Campbell.
Bill Carpenter.
Oh, Carpenter, yeah. Bill, can you stand up and introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bill. Very good.
Very glad to be here. I'm Bill Carpenter. I practice law with Scott Benson. I'm very happy to see old friends here and make new friends. So it's delightful to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
And Morgan Zenner is here from Scott's invitation.
Hey, hello, good morning. My name's Morgan Zahner. Scott's been inviting me for 5 years, maybe. It's my first meeting. So I just want to thank you, Scott, for your ambassadorship. I'm a nonprofit small business development consultant, and I'm just very grateful to be with you today.
And Heather Hefner is here today at the invitation of John Vandermeid.
Hi, everyone. Just like you, I've been invited to this Rotary Club for 3 years from my friend Anna Koskren, who I knew in elementary school, and she's not here today. The reason she kept inviting me is because I'm a communication consultant and run my own business. So she thought it'd be a nice fit. And I'm here today, though, because my youngest daughter is applying for Rotary Youth Exchange. And I've been speaking with John about it. He's been very helpful. And so we are in the application process. And I thought, okay, you know what you do for your children, because I'm not a morning person. The reason I never came with Anna, like 7:30, you have got to be kidding me. That is the only reason. So this morning I stumbled out of bed for Sophie. She laughed at me because that's what children do to their mothers sometimes. She's very respectful, but I guess I look funny in the morning. So I'm grateful to be here. It's really nice to see all these friendly faces, and thank you.
And for the another person you can talk to, Heather, about youth exchange is Patrick Burns, who has been a member and has returned for the speaker today. Pat?
Good morning. Even if you leave the club for 5 or more years, they keep inviting you. So thank you, Gene, and others who've been welcoming. I think I attended once virtually or twice, but I haven't been to a meeting at the Women's Club. I'm an attorney, solo attorney. My office is across the park in Loring Corners, so it's very convenient. And my kids are all teenagers, one in college, so it's a little easier to maybe get back in the fold. And I was a Rotary Exchange student, so I'd be happy to talk with you about that. And the guest speaker is a native son of my hometown, Sioux Falls, so I had to show up and support. All right, thank you.
Gail?
Good morning. My guest this morning is Julie Noakes, and she is virtual. So Julie, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Gail, and good morning, everyone. I'm so delighted that Gail invited me this morning. I work for Deluxe Corporation, and within my position, I support a territory of banks and credit unions in the upper Midwest, helping them to analyze their financials and develop a strategic plan to serve their local businesses and communities. The reason that I chose to join today's meeting is because we recently opened our new headquarters in downtown Minneapolis and pledged $1 million to promote equality. So I thought the topic of today's conversation would be very interesting. So thank you for inviting me.
So Brock, do we have any other online guests? Okay. Thank you.
Keep bringing those guests. I gotta say, I am in the lead in December for number of guests. So don't forget the spectacular prizes that you can get. Gene Johnson, we have an installation and of Sandy this morning. So Gene, I'll call you up for that.
That's a great spot right
Perfect.
there. Yes. Actually over here, because you're gonna block the words. in case people-
Yeah, okay.
For anybody.
Just in case we need a little help.
Well, good morning, everybody. And welcome to all these wonderful visitors. It's great to have you. It's my privilege and honor today to formally welcome Sandy Christensen as a new member of the City of Lakes Rotary Club.
Great.
Sandy is sponsored by Jim Botts, who I think is online.
I am. Good morning. Congratulations, Sandy. Glad to have you.
Hi, Jim. Sandy is Vice President of Finance and Administration for Meet Minneapolis. It also has another name, but I went with Meet Minneapolis because we all know that. She attended Haverford College in Pennsylvania, right? Has a BA from the University of Minnesota Morris and a master's in public administration from Hamline University. Sandy's on the Hamline University School of Business Executive Council and the Farmington Lutheran Church Finance Committee, and is a member of several professional organizations with letters that I didn't know what to do with. So, in her spare time, she likes camping and arts activities. Sandy says she joined Rotary to participate in the continued recovery and growth of the community, particularly driving equity and education to help more local and regional residents attain success. So I'd say you're in the right place. Sandy's classification is finance. And we look forward to hearing just a little bit more about you in just a few minutes. Sandy is going to introduce herself. Sandy, you are joining a global network of leaders in Rotary and the approximately 90 members that make up City Lakes Rotary Club. As I believe you've already seen, you'll find many opportunities to participate. We look forward to seeing you at Wednesday morning meetings, volunteering with many local and global service projects, and partaking in happy hours and other events. I have a few items here for you. Yeah, I have a plaque, a lovely wooden plaque. Well packaged, thank you, yes. What do they call that, duplicate packaging or something? Yes, so that's for you.
It is indeed lovely.
Phew. And then we have in here a coin. I wouldn't try to spend it, but you know, you can put it in your coin collection. That good luck coin, a wallet card, so you can always remember the four-way test. And on behalf of Jim Voss, I will present your Rotary pin.
Very nice, thank you.
And so as part of our induction process, I asked the club everyone to put your forks down a second, stand up, and we're going to repeat the four-way test together. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? So Sandy, congratulations on becoming a Rotarian, and welcome to Minneapolis City of Lakes, the best Rotary Club in the world. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful welcome. Much appreciated. It's very nice to see everybody in person. I've been on a few virtual meetings, and there's nothing quite like being around real live people. I thank Jim for inviting me, although I do see how this bait and switch works. He brings you in and then he doesn't show up. So, but that's okay, Jim. We'll see you again soon. As Jean mentioned, my name is Sandy Christensen. I work with an organization called Meet Minneapolis. The long name that I understand why she didn't want to go through it is the Greater Minneapolis Convention and Visitors Association, but Meet Minneapolis actually works much better. So our organization is closely associated with the city of Minneapolis, and we are charged with bringing people in, both visitors, meetings, guests, filling up the convention center, filling up the hotels, keeping our hospitality industry robust and the folks employed. As you know, that industry was decimated over the past year and a half, still down to over 20,000 jobs in the hospitality industry. So that's something that we're very interested in bringing back to the community. It both helps the residents and it also is a great funding stream for the city itself. So that's my job. About Sandy, I am married. I have 2 children. Both of them are in college. One is 21, one is 19. I'm fortunate that they still live at home with me. So it helps my college pocketbook. But it's wonderful to have them there. The whole COVID pandemic thing has been a little bit challenging for young adults trying to launch themselves. So we're looking forward to them moving forward in their lives. With my kids getting older, has freed up some opportunities for me to start engaging some activities to benefit, both me personally, but then also the community, which is something that is very important to me, is to be able to give back. I've been fortunate throughout my life and my career to have had people help me out along the way. And that's what I'd like to do going forward, to help other people grow and succeed. And I'm a good helper. I'm a strong worker, and I'm good at raising my hand to help along the way. So that's me in a nutshell, and happy to answer any questions now or in the future, or if you need a helper, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Jeff, I'm going to bug you again because now we have announcements coming. And I will start. I just wanted to let you know, John Groth is in the hospital. John being one of our charter members. He was taken to Fairview Southdale Hospital last night with infection and a kidney stone. And so the stone will have to be removed in a couple of weeks. He's in quite a bit of pain and somewhat agitated. So think and keep John in your thoughts and prayers. He's planning on returning to the Minnesota Masonic home in a few days and then returning in a couple of weeks to have his kidney stone removed. So think about John and do send him a card. I know he loves to get our cards and messages. I'll also just note that Lisa couldn't be here today, but don't forget, we've got our gift drive coming up. Again, this year we're teaming with the Boys and Girls Club of the Twin Cities with the Kids Can Give program, and donations are being accepted to allow kids to be able to come and purchase a gift and give it to a family member. And so in the next couple weeks, you can bring an unwrapped gift here to the club and they will be collected, or you can send it via Amazon or Target or whatever directly to the Boys and Girls Club. Just check online for that and make sure that you participate in that. Gail Noakes has an announcement this morning. Gail.
Yes, just a reminder that next week on Thursday is our monthly peer group meeting. And so we start gathering about 6:45 a.m. and have our conversation from 7 to 8. Yes, another early morning. But our topic is on procrastination. So if you'd like a little conversation about that, come and join us. We start late, yeah. And and our leader of that conversation is going to be Jonathan Hobbs. So if you would like to join us, just contact me at gail@gailnoakes.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Gail. Jean Johnson has an announcement.
Tomorrow night at my house, we're going to have a welcome social for new members and also prospective members. If you'd like to hang out and visit with some of our new members in a smaller setting, come on by my house in Minneapolis. I can get you the address if you want it, and just wine and cheese and welcome and nice conversation with our new members. It's from 5 to 6:30. Everyone is welcome. And can I turn it over to Matthew for?
Yes, Matthew has an award online, I think.
Okay.
Matthew is online. Matthew.
I've got game show music. Can you guys hear that? City of Lakers, good morning. It's time to announce our November winner. We have a prize for the City of Lakes member who brought the most guests to our meetings for the month of November. And congratulations to Ada Kunle. He brought guest Andrew Hoffman more than once, and when you know it, Andrew has joined the club as a member. Lucky us. Adekunle will make his selection from a treasure trove of prizes. There are gift cards to restaurants and coffee shops in Minneapolis. And of course, there is so much Rotary swag, you wouldn't believe it. So with today being the first day of December, our contest is on, and it looks like Scott is our current leader. And as a reminder to everyone, keep bringing guests. If we are truly the best Rotary Club on earth, why keep our club a secret? So let's grow our club so we have an even bigger impact on Minneapolis and the people that need a helping hand. So thank you, and back to you, Scott.
Thank you, Matthew. Congratulations, Adekunle.
As a previous winner of the most guests, I was given a sleeve of golf balls, which I sprayed all over a golf course down in Phoenix. So I am promoting City of Lakes Rotary. I'm probably going to be known as the hat guy. I was able to deliver one more hat today to Jennifer Kradick. This is for the new members. If anyone wants to get a City of Lakes Rotary Club baseball cap suitable for wearing at all times, see me, $26. If you don't buy them, ultimately Julie Grape is going to take it in the shorts on that one. So please buy a hat from me, $26. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, you know, the president has a lot of duties, including covering that debt, I guess. So that's from Julie Grape's here and not mine. All right, thank you. Thank you, Greg. And those caps are great. So make sure you get one if you don't have one yet. Any other announcements that I missed? All right. Well, I'm going to introduce our day chair for the day. Steve Morris is our day chair. He has been a member of City Lakes Rotary for 4 years. He spent the last 10 years in the enterprise software industry. He currently works as a senior account executive at SAP, selling procurement software. Prior to SAP, he worked in sales at Oracle. And before entering software sales, he was a newspaper reporter covering high school sports and city government. When he's not working in his corporate job, he owns his own e-commerce business selling on Amazon. Steve grew up in Duluth and now lives in Blaine with his wife and 2 boys, Clayton and Emerson. And having been on raking detail with Clayton and Emerson, let me tell you, those kids are hard workers. In his free time, he likes to snowboard, do CrossFit, read, and experiment with biohacking. Steve is a proud alumni of the Minnesota State Mankato, where, here's a fun fact, he was the college mascot for 4 years and had his own biweekly column in the student newspaper. So Steve, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker. Is he virtual or in person? Okay, sorry, I should have known that before, but I just thought to figure that out until right now. So it was on my list to look you up on LinkedIn, but I forgot. Our guest this morning is David Lillehaug, former justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. He grew up in Sioux Falls, went to Augustana College, and graduated from Harvard Law School with honors in 1979. After clerking for a federal district court judge in Minneapolis, he was a litigator in private practice for about 25 years. His clients include Fortune 100 companies, Minnesota's governor, 3 U.S. senators, the University of Minnesota, the city of St. Paul, and tribal nations. In 2009, David tried and won a 7-week U.S. Senate trial election. From 1994 to 1998, David was the United States Attorney for Minnesota, the federal government's chief prosecutor and civil lawyer in the state. Apropos of recent events, his office worked closely with federal, state, and local law enforcement and social service agencies to bring an end to what was then known as Murderapolis. In 2013, David was appointed to the Minnesota Supreme Court, where he served for 7 years. Justice Lillehaug sat on more than 600 cases and wrote over 140 opinions. His topic today is behind the scenes at the Minnesota Supreme Court. Please welcome up Justin Haldberg.
Thank you, Steve, for that generous introduction. As you can tell, he and I are very close. And Scott, thank you for inviting me. Scott Benson was a fabulous city council member for the city of Minneapolis. He's a great lawyer. I've worked with him on a couple of matters, and I'm delighted to be at his home Rotary chapter. So I hear from a couple of speakers, this is the best Rotary chapter in the world. I did not know that. And I have to say, the first time I heard it asserted, I thought, well, can that be true? And then the second time I hear it asserted, can that be true? And then I think, well, it has to be true because number one, it has to be the truth. So I'm glad to be with you at the best Rotary chapter in the world. All right, the title of my presentation is Behind the Scenes at the Minnesota Supreme Court. I may be promising a little bit too much, but I promise that you will actually see things that visitors to the court do not ordinarily see. And wouldn't you know it, our flipper goes out at just this moment. Oh, this is a problem. Steve, yeah, let's figure this out. All right, there we go. Let's see. Yeah, now it's working. The Supreme Court is at the top of a judicial branch that consists of 3,300 employees, has a big budget, led by the Judicial Council, which is chaired by the Chief Justice, and I'll tell you more about her in just a moment. Here's a map of the state of Minnesota. The state's divided up into 10 judicial districts, and it's a three-layer cake. You start with the district court. If you don't like what happens in the district court, you take your case to the Court of Appeals and then potentially to the Minnesota Supreme Court. So we've got a lot of courthouses around the state with a lot of jurisdiction. We're handling about 1.3 million cases a year. Now, a bunch of those are traffic tickets and speeding violations and things like that. But there are 60,000 major criminal cases and 30,000 major civil cases in Minnesota every year. Now, what are the problems the district courts are facing? Well, COVID. I mean, you saw in the Chauvin trial, people having to be separated. How do you have a jury trial? How do you have people interacting in the courtroom? A lot of high publicity cases, that being chief among them. Other problems, how do we deal with addiction? How do we deal with mental health issues? How do we deal with the increase in child abuse and elder abuse? We got an increased percentage of self-represented litigants. They don't have lawyers. They can't afford lawyers. Cases involving interpreters, online access to judicial records. People expect that now. And all the economic and racial issues that plague the rest of our society. So now let's switch to the Supreme Court. It was established as a territorial court under President Zachary Taylor, and it met in hotels, churches, stores, and so on, and then became established by Article 6 in the Minnesota Constitution. The first Supreme Court justice was a guy named Charles Flandreau. Those of you who know South Dakota know there's a town and an Indian reservation named after Flandreau. But Flandreau was an Indian fighter as well and participated in the 1862 Dakota Massacre. And now 150 years later, one of my former colleagues is Justice Ann McCaig, a member of the White Earth Band, who was sworn in. So things have changed a lot in 150 years. The Supreme Court consists of one Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices. I was one of those for 7 years. And we have had 6-year terms. And if there's a vacancy, if somebody resigns, as did I, then the vacancy is filled by the governor. But then you have to run in the next general election more than 1 year away. And so I was sworn in. This gives me a chance. It's a little bit of scrapbooking today. Gives you a chance to show you my wife and daughter who were present when I was sworn in. And then I stood for election in 2014. And this is us outside the polling booth at Jones Harrison Residence in South Minneapolis. It's a diverse court. 3 of the justices come from the Court of Appeals, 3 from the district court, 1 from private practice. 6 different law schools are represented. The Minnesota Supreme Court was the first court in the nation to have a majority of women on the court. And it has a majority of women to this day, with, of course, the Chief Justice being a woman as well, and represent a Black member, a Native member, and an LGBT member as well, a diverse court. Some fast facts about the court. It considers 700 cases a year from the Court of Appeals, take about 100, and then have jurisdiction of things such as appeals from tax court, workers' compensation, lawyer discipline, etc. But the most important thing is the Minnesota Supreme Court is unanimous in its decisions about 80% of the time. There is a culture at the court where I should say they now, but I've only been out of it 15 months, where we listen to each other. We consider the other person's point of view. We look carefully at the law and try to reach agreement. And the Supreme Court does that about 80% of the time, much more than the US Supreme Court, by the way. This is the court in July of 2020. As you'll see, I was third most senior at that point, sitting on the bottom right. And then I resigned and Justice Gordon Moore was added in August of 2020. He came from the district court in Worthington. So I was happy at the choice of my successor, but then I was thinking, what's the headline going to be? Justice Moore is coming in. I had a bad dream, but the headline was, with Lillehaug out, the court gets more. And the governor says he's got more experience. That's fake news, by the way. And here is the court today, and you see new Justice Moore in the upper right-hand part of the picture. Now, the question I get most frequently is, what's it like working with Justice Page? And I have to say, he retired in 2015. Oh, I didn't know that. But I did work with him for a couple of years. He was a terrific colleague, a very wise man. And this is a picture of Justice Page reading a book that he and his daughter co-authored, reading to third or fourth graders. And it's called Alan's Fabulous Perpendicular Pinky. And look at the pinky on his left hand. It goes at about a 90-degree angle. That happened when he was playing football, and for whatever reason, he didn't get it fixed. So now it's an enormous pinky. But he is still retired. But in his honor, the court, we all wore bow ties because he always wears a bow tie. And that was a very warm and tearful farewell to Justice Page. The court does its business in the Minnesota Judicial Center. When you go to the Capitol, look straight at the Capitol and then to the right. That's the Judicial Center. And the arrow shows the approximately where my office was. And I'm going to now take you behind the scenes. And the first thing you do when you go to the 4th floor in the Minnesota Judicial Center is see this curving hallway. You saw in the previous slide how the building curves. And there is history in the hallway because every time there's a new justice, a new picture of the court is taken and then it's hung up in the hallway. So you can follow the progress of the court over more than 150 years by going down this list of pictures. So welcome to Chambers. This is where I hung out for about 7 years. And it's a nice office. Cherry wood, very nice space. But the key thing is, you see those law books there? I would be jumping up and down from my desk, looking at cases all the time. Now, it's true they're online, but I'm still kind of a paper book guy. And that was really key to my existence at the court. And now I'm going to take you to courtroom 300, which is the one floor below. This is where the Supreme Court does half of its business, and I'll explain why it's only half in just a moment. This is the back entrance to the courtroom. Nobody ever sees this. You're now seeing it. The reason I'm showing it to you is because it is the job of the most junior justice. When the justices line up to go into court, the junior justice is closest to the door. And it's that person's job to go knock, knock. And then the marshal inside the court hears the knock, knock, and then brings down the gavel. All rise, the Supreme Court of the state of Minnesota. So it's a very important job to knock just at the right time. We had some problems with Justice Thiessen because I told him, you knock twice. And the first time he did it, he went, knock, knock, knock. I said, Justice Thiessen, you're supposed to knock twice. Well, then he got stubborn, and from that time onward, it was 3 knocks all the time. See, I'm giving you the inside dirt. So then my first time on the bench after knocking successfully, I was very worried, am I going to end up in the right chair? So I walk in and you go down the line, and then happily, they had posted a sign showing where Lillehaug is supposed to sit. So I sat in the right chair for my first oral argument. And this is what the inside of courtroom 300 looks like. Oral argument is very important to the court. The attorneys have about an hour between them to make their arguments, and we interrupt them with questions and try to get to the bottom of the case and find out what the law is and what it should be. Now, I said the court does half of its business in the Judicial Center. The other half of oral arguments occur in the Minnesota State Capitol. And this is the courtroom in the State Capitol. And I put before because this is before the Capitol was renovated. And I want to point out a couple things to you. Look at that painting above the bench and what it looks like now. And then look at the chairs. Those are the most uncomfortable chairs in the world. And I'm telling you the truth because of test number one. You would not want to sit in those chairs for 5 minutes, much less 15 minutes. And it was hard to keep attention. And you'll see artificial light coming from the top. And now here's an inside picture of the Capitol, the courtroom dome. And over approximately 110 years, there must have been a lot of hot air coming from that floor. Because inside the Capitol dome, it was wet, there was asbestos, it was moldy, it was pretty ugly. Then the Capitol went under renovation. You may remember the dome of the Capitol was essentially in a plastic bag. And this is the Capitol courtroom during the renovation. They put up scaffolding and they went inch by inch over all the paintings, which are beautiful and very valuable paintings. And the court did all of its work in the Judicial Center. Then there was the grand opening of the Capitol in August 2017. And this is the Capitol today. It is one of the great public buildings in the United States, in the world. And this is the Capitol courtroom after. You remember how that painting looked? And now it is, the colors just snap. And there are actually chairs that are comfortable and you can sit there and listen to oral argument and not be distracted by how bad the chairs are. And also, there's a skylight in this dome and it had been covered up. And as part of the renovation, the skylight was opened up. And I think that's a beautiful symbolism, bright light shining on the work of the Minnesota Supreme Court. Then if you look up in the four corners of the dome, you see the word Lex. Now that's not Lex Luthor. That is the Latin word for law. And to me, it says the law is above us all. And you see that same theme at the back of the courtroom. This is the door above the door going out. Where law ends, tyranny begins. And I don't know how you interpret the events of the last few years, but that strikes home to me more now than it ever has. Where law ends, tyranny begins, and we must resist that. I mentioned oral argument. I mentioned asking questions. I loved oral argument. I tried always to be courteous and professional because after all, it's not a fair fight. You got the guy in the black robe up on the bench and the attorney down in the well of the courtroom. But the idea is to find out what's the truth, what are the facts, what is the rule of law that this court should announce. And the arguments now are live streamed. So if you're tired of watching paint dry, you can go to the Supreme Court website and watch an oral argument. And some of them are pretty entertaining. And then in 2021, we had oral arguments on the web. We were not having court in the courtroom. We had it on the web, and that worked out really pretty darn well under all the circumstances. We've all learned to adjust with COVID. Boy, you might have seen the court a lot in the news lately. I've given an example here of a newspaper boy going extra, extra, read all about it. I realize nobody reads newspapers anymore, but it's been in the news a lot. So I took an example of September 16, 2021. And there were 3 Minnesota Supreme Court cases that were on the front page of the Metro section. And the one that was probably got the most publicity was the reversal of the conviction of police officer Mohammed Noor on third-degree murder charges. Now there wasn't a reversal on manslaughter, but on third-degree murder. Then there was an issue regarding the state pardon board where the governor and the chief justice were at odds. And then there was the Minneapolis ballot question number 2. The court had to decide in its final form whether it was misleading or not, and decided it was not. So the Board of Pardons case I mentioned. Marijuana, anything about marijuana these days is a big deal. The Minnesota Supreme Court said medical marijuana is not appropriate to treat workplace injuries because federal law still prohibits marijuana. Then anything in Minnesota involving lakes, water, gets a lot of publicity. And the court this year had 2 cases involving docks, whether the docks violated zoning regulations, were too long. And this is really weird. One of the cases, the name of the dock owner was Doc. Jason Doc. So that was the Doc case. Dickety, dickety, Doc. And then there were, this was the year of environmental cases, and I see we have Grant Merritt, the co-author of the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, in the audience today. So the court handled cases involving a gas plant in Wisconsin, Polymet, Enbridge Line 2, the City of Minneapolis Comprehensive Plan, and then a couple of cases just as I was leaving the court involving the lake name. Was it going to be Lake Calhoun or Bedeh-Makaska? And I was proud to write the opinion saying it's Bedeh-Makaska. And then finally, there's no presentation is complete without a picture of a cute dog. And by the way, I'm a dog guy, I'm not a cat guy. There will be no cat videos today. But the Supreme Court got an enormous amount of publicity about the custody of Oliver the dog. And the question was, when somebody transfers a dog to someone else to keep, when does ownership vest in the new owner? Because the new owner, the person in custody of the dog didn't want to give the dog back. And so it was a technical question of property law. When is property abandoned? And Oliver the dog went back to her original owner. Now I'd like to show you some slides that I just collected over the years of other things that the Supreme Court's doing besides hearing oral argument and deciding cases. The court takes its show on the road and has an actual oral argument in a real case before high school students in the spring in the metro area, in the fall in greater Minnesota. And that's a great time because after we're done, we line up on the stage and the high school students can ask us questions. And believe me, some of the questions are unbelievable, but we answer them all. And then in the afternoon, we go and teach a high school class, preferably a social studies or government class, but I think in this slide shows me teaching a creative writing class. So I was trying to say, how can we be creative in writing all across the board? Justices are equivalent to judges, notaries, and can administer oaths. Here I am swearing in then Lieutenant Governor Tina Smith, who now is the United States Senator. Two justices are members of the State Canvassing Board, which is an obscure board created under the Minnesota Constitution that receives all the election results from around the state and then declares whether the election results are valid or not. And if people disagree, then they can start what's called an election contest. And I was heavily involved, as my friend Steve mentioned, in the 2008-2009 election contest between Al Franken and Norm Coleman. The justices have a really good seat for the state of the state message by the governor. You see me, I've done a Where's Waldo thing and put an arrow so you can see where I am during the Governor Dayton's message. One year, the governor was speaking and then all of a sudden his head fell forward and he hit the microphone and he needed to be resuscitated. He was just dehydrated, but there was a great deal of excitement at that state of the state message. You get visitors from a number of places all across the globe, primarily here to see the best Rotary Club in the world, but also to visit the Minnesota Judicial Center. Here's a lawyer from China who stopped by my chambers. And then I had a visitor from Canada. A goose plopped right outside my window, and despite knocking on the window, it would not go away. Justices also have the right to officiate at weddings. And this is a wedding of one of my law clerks. And this happened outside Little Falls in August of 2014. It was 105 degrees in the shade that day. And this wedding occurred right out in the middle of a field with the sun beating down. And when you're wearing a black robe, that's all I'm going to say. And then we had marriage equality in Minnesota in the aftermath of the 2012 election and legislation by the Minnesota legislature. And here I'm marrying one of my former law partners to the woman on the left is a detective for the Minneapolis or the Metropolitan Airports Commission. And that was a very warm and wonderful event. So thanks for your time and attention. I know it's important that you get out of here at a particular time. So I've left a little time for questions. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Justice Who's sleeping on your new job? Okay, never mind. Today is a very significant hearing in Washington, D.C., in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And
Yes.
everybody's going to be listening for what the justices say. So in your experience in serving as a chief justice, you tip your hand in the type of questions you ask. Do the attorneys know who's going to win?
By the way, thank you for promoting me to Chief Justice retroactively. It's heartwarming. So I think the question is oral argument. How can you tell what's really going to happen? You can't. Now, you may say that justice asked a question which indicates he or she's going a certain way. Sometimes they're just playing devil's advocate. And they're seeking the other side of the argument. They want to flesh out an argument and get both sides talking about it. Another possibility is that they're actually asking a question to influence a colleague. So, for example, when justices on the Supreme Court prepare for a case, typically they're not talking to each other in the run-up to the argument. So the argument itself is the first time you start to get to hear what other people are thinking. And sometimes I would, if an attorney wasn't doing well on a point and I wanted to rehabilitate him, I'd ask a friendly question, a little softball question, so the other justices could hear, well, maybe this is a stronger argument than the attorney is making. So there are dynamics going on at all times during oral argument. And sometimes the justices are showing where they stand and sometimes they're hiding their cards. So beware of these news stories saying, well, it looks like a majority of the court is going to do this. That makes for good reading. It's like predicting in advance how a football game is going to turn out and you're betting on the spread. I mean, knowing the makeup of this court, there is a likelihood that something is going to happen to cut back on Roe versus Wade. I mean, I think you can say that much, but you can't say very much more because it will depend on the arguments and the deliberations afterwards. Other questions? Yes.
How is it determined who writes an opinion on a case when it's settled?
When it's decided. In the run-up to the oral argument, one justice is assigned, in his or her chambers, assigned the responsibility to prepare a research memorandum about the case and the law. And then at the conference that occurs immediately after oral argument, that justice will report on the case and make a recommendation on how it should be decided. If that justice's report garners a majority, and by the way, then we go around the circle and talk about the case. Everybody gets to say whatever they want to for as long as they want to. But then finally a vote is taken. And if the justice who made the report, his or her recommendation is accepted, then presumptively that justice will write the opinion. If the justice's recommendation is not accepted, and that justice then is in dissent, then the lead dissent will typically be written by that justice. So the workload is spread around, although everybody, we hope, and usually they do, does enough work to arrive at an independent determination as to what how the case should be decided. Back there, sir.
Quick question for you on tax court, Minnesota tax court cases. Is my recollection correct that those are appealed directly to the state Supreme Court? And if so, what was the policy reason for that versus going through the normal appellate court and then Supreme Court?
By the way, in every audience, there's one tax person. Good for you, sir. Good for you. The Minnesota, I think the reason, to answer your question, the reason is that the Minnesota Tax Court and the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals are kind of different animals. They are executive branch courts. They are within the executive branch. And so the choice has been made, maybe as a matter of the Constitution, that eventually it has to get to the Minnesota Supreme Court, because executive branch courts cannot have a final decision that's not reviewable by the judicial branch. So I think that's the way it happened. as a practical matter, not an enormous percentage of the court's time is spent on the tax court and workers' compensation court of appeals. I've done an analysis of the last 100 cases decided by the court, all of them after I left the bench. And I think there were 11% of the cases that had to do with tax or workers' compensation. So about 10%, 11% of the court's time is devoted to the executive branch courts. Good question. I'll make sure you're in the next audience as well.
David, we met about a decade ago when I was heading up Draw the Line, Minnesota, the redistricting program that we were doing. And we ended up, holding gatherings all around the state and then making a presentation to the Supreme Court that finally had to make the decision. It's always been.
I think probably your presentation was to a special 5-judge panel.
Thank you. I'll stand corrected.
Okay.
I trust your memory better than mine. But one of the things I feel really strongly about is I'm not sure that elected public officials ought to be making decisions about who is in their district and who they get to have vote for them. And I think it's much better to have an independent citizens piece. And in Minnesota, it's had to go to the court a number of times. And I'm just wondering about your thoughts on redistricting, because we're in the midst of all that, and it really makes a huge difference for the future of how our democracy works. Thanks.
Well, the concept of political parties gerrymandering goes back to Elbridge Gerry back in the 1790s, early 1800s. So this is not a new phenomenon where people get control of a legislative body and then want to control where the lines are drawn, primarily to help the incumbents. I do think that with computer technology, though, and increased sophistication of the legal talent involved, we're seeing more and more gerrymandering. Now, what's the solution to that? Well, the US Supreme Court now has pretty well said it's getting out of the business of reversing maps that are gerrymandered. Their basic message that I read in between the lines is it's going to be political and judges just can't be political. Whether you agree or disagree with that, there are some states that have independent commissions to do the redrawing of the lines. But then the question is, who gets appointed to the independent commission? And some states with strong majorities of one party or the other, when you've got both houses and the governor, you can do pretty much what you want, may take the commission's map and end up redoing it. Because at the end of the day, under the US Constitution and most state constitutions, it's up to the legislature and the governor to decide where the redistricting lines are. This is a long way of saying, I think you've identified a serious problem, and a short way of saying, I don't know what the answer is.
Karen Scott online asks, in the Rittenhouse case in Wisconsin, there was discussion in the media about whether the judge should be disciplined for certain actions. How is it objectively determined if disciplinary action of a judge should be pursued or not?
Well, it's objectively determined because we have a board of judicial standards that is a professional operation run by professional staff. And so if you have a complaint about a judge, you make the complaint to the board of judicial standards, and then it will investigate. And if it decides that the judge has violated the Minnesota rules of judicial conduct, there are such things, then it will start a proceeding against the judge, which eventually may eventually end up in the Minnesota Supreme Court. During my time on the bench, we did discipline a couple of judges, including one basically saying they can't be a judge again. Happily, the number of serious violations is small. I'm not giving you an opinion on whether the judge in the Rittenhouse case violated any of the judicial standards, but I saw some clips that were of great concern to me. I think when you're a judge, the words you say have so much impact. And when you see a judge losing her or his temper, or appearing to lose temper, not maintaining an even keel, then you start wondering, is the judge in the bag for one side or the other? I'm not saying that judge was, but there were, and it is difficult sometimes to judge an entire trial based on press clips. We know that. Which is among the reasons why I think we need more television coverage rather than less television coverage of criminal proceedings. But there were some things that that judge was doing that gave me some concern.
Any,
What role does seniority play in the court? And then why are there unpublished decisions from the Court of Appeals?
Two questions. What role does seniority play on the court? And number two, why are there non-precedential decisions from the Court of Appeals? In answer to the first question, seniority is important in this sense. The order of discussion in conference is governed by seniority. You have the justice reporting a recommendation, then it goes down the line in order of seniority and back up with the Chief Justice always speaking last. The idea of the Chief Justice speaking last is the Chief Justice may find a way to get everybody on board and make the opinion unanimous. Other seniority does affect which office, which chambers you're getting along that curved row. The Chief Justice gets the best view, and that's just fine. The junior justice has to do the knocking, does not have to go get coffee and donuts for the other justices. But at the end of the day, each justice has one vote. And the question is, when there are 4 votes for a majority, nobody cares who's senior and who's not. On your second question, why are there non-precedential opinions from the Court of Appeals? That is a lengthy, that would be a lengthy answer. Suffice it to say is, I don't think there should be as many of them. I think when appellate courts decide cases, they need to announce what the law is, and that it should be precedent. It should be what's called in Latin stare decisis, that governs proceedings going forward unless and until a higher court changes the rule. One last question, and then I'll let you get out in a timely way. Last one, Mr. Burns.
Thank you. I assume it was a hard decision to leave the court. I don't know anything about your decision making, but if you would have stayed, what was the best part?
Well, it was a hard decision to leave the court, and I was transparent in my reason for doing so. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and the progress of the disease was and remains uncertain. I wanted to make sure I had sufficient time to do some things on my bucket list, including a bunch of travel, which of course got blown up by COVID. That is a first world problem, though. And so I'm practicing law 1/3 time, which gives me the time to get the needed exercise and movement that is helpful in slowing the progress of Parkinson's. Also, there's been a recent study saying golf is very good for Parkinson's patients. And I believe that study to be the full truth. And what was the second part of your question? Oh, the best part of being on the court was you knew you were a part of history. And let me end with what will be less than a 1-minute story. The very first case that I sat on, it was a very important issue in workers' compensation, maybe not to the general world, but to that particular area of the world, one of the most important ever. And as I mentioned, somebody gives the report and then you go down the line in seniority. I started watching the votes as they were coming in and I thought, my God, this could be a 4-3 decision and I will be the one deciding the case. And in that moment, kind of the weight of an enormity of the job just kind of settled on my shoulders. My stomach started churning and I was thinking, you know, lawyers 100 years from now may be reading the decision in this case. And what will they think about Lillehaug's vote? Well, the anticlimax to the story is the 4th vote came in before me and I ended up writing a dissent in my very first case. But being a part of history and being able to announce a rule of law that unless it's changed by the legislature or by some future court decision, it's going to apply for the next 100 years. And it was such an honor and such a privilege to be part of that enterprise. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
I gotta call my friend back up. Thank you so much for speaking. Great presentation. As a small token, here's a gift, a bookmark from our partner made in Haiti.
Thank you.
And then I want to present a book to you. And on your speaking day, here's a book we ask you to sign that will be donated to Way to Grow, a nonprofit that helps at-risk kids in Minneapolis be more successful in school. So the book you sign will be given to third graders, so they'll be have their own time by a leader in the community. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Justice Lillehaug. That was great. Next week, we have Marcus Flynn from Black Men Teach, who, as you know, was our Rotary Award recipient a couple weeks ago. And so we're looking forward to hearing from Marcus again. Thank you to Gail Noakes for the reflection today. Steve, thank you for being our day chair. Rooters, as always, thank you for that tremendous song. Brock, thank you for being our Zoom master. And Dick, thank you so much for signing folks in. You all have a great Rotary week.